Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, we're here in Ottawa. I am with my colleague Celine Gala. Celine, how are you doing?
Doing so good today, William. How are you?
Pretty tired. It was a long day hearing lengthy testimonies by Transport Canada witnesses, by CBSA, Canadian Border Service Agency witnesses as well. One witness from CBSA. So it was a pretty long day. I'm here to my left also by Eva Chipiuk, lawyer for Freedom Corp. Eva, how are you doing?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I think that you were sitting in the stand the whole day today throughout the whole procedures. I just want to get your thoughts on what your general impression of the day was, and then we can get into what went on yesterday during Commissioner Brenda Lucki from the RCMP's testimony.
Yeah, well, honestly, today I wasn't too incredibly impressed with the witness panels we had. We had first CBSA, the president of the Canadian Border Services Agency, and he said that they have an intelligence and an enforcement agency. But under cross again with Brendan Miller, it was confirmed that he has no say in whether or not the Emergencies Act should be invoked. So scratch that, on to the next. And then we had Transport Canada, and we heard a lot of projections and lots of talking from the Transport Canada about fear of investment and decline in how much was being the border was being affected by these blockades. Lots of ifs, what ifs, and all these not real committed answers. And then under cross-examination with Brendan Miller, like, he sets everybody straight so quickly, which is what I love. And so first thing he showed was there was already an email that was sent to Omar Al-Jabra. I hope I got that right.
Well, we always call him Al-Jabra, but it's Al-Gabra.
Okay, think, but Marco Mendicino and Melanie Jolie. And you know what, like, to some extent, I'm with Brendan about these people's names. Like, they don't talk to us. I think they're in this like bubble. Like, why should I care about their names? I'm getting to that feeling today. I'm a bit frustrated, so it's coming out. So they're emailed on this email saying that ArriveCAN is causing insane problems and pressures on the border. And here we have these two high officials from the Transport Canada going on for 2 hours about how the blockades that went on for 3 weeks, not even in Windsor, it was a few days.
It was a few days.
It was a few trucks. We're not stupid. Like, let's look at the real evidence and not your fears and what you thought would have been. And he even said that, we were able to secure billion-dollar investments from these 4 companies. So clearly, like, if we actually look at evidence today, it was just, I'm getting to like my boiling point here, that these bureaucrats I don't know who they're being servants to. It's definitely not the Canadian people. So for what I was saying is there was clear evidence that ArriveCAN was causing a lot of the issues on the border blockade, border problems, not the protesters. They had no evidence to justify it. And then there was also, second thing that came up was stats, and you could see that it didn't actually change. And no recognition for it. So they're just up there with some political talking points, zero evidence. This is an inquiry. This is about evidence, and that's what we're here for.
It was exhausting. Honestly, it was very exhausting. And I kind of apologize to the people that were following my live tweeting today, but like, to go and to try and explain all of the lengths that they were going to absolutely confirm all the things that we know and then backpedal and just give absolute irrelevant information 4 hours was insane. So I didn't want to just pollute my live tweets with, these are the statistics that didn't change, that won't change, that haven't changed. These are all of their excuses. And when last name Dea, the chief economist for Transport Canada, when he was speaking on and on and on, like, I even saw that the lawyers were cutting him off because he was just going on endlessly. He was taking all of these tangents and just diverting from the topic at times. It was exhausting to watch and to try and pay attention. It was very, very dry. And as you just said, Brendan Miller set them straight pretty fast, regardless of the fact that he had like this much time in comparison to the other lawyers that cross-examined those 2 gentlemen today.
Yeah, there's one thing that Eva said I just want to show exactly what you were talking about. When you were talking about the ArriveCAN app and the borders, the issues at the border, if we can pull up the tweet that I just sent exactly. So here's the evidence that was shown in front of the committee today. If we can zoom in on, I believe, the third paragraph, it states in custom, if we can just zoom in on the third paragraph, if possible. In customs basis figures for February, trade activity by road transport at these border crossings fell 8.8% compared with February 2021, with the Ambassador Bridge and Coutts crossings posting the largest declines. However, and this is the important part, increased trade activity was observed at other crossings near the ones that were blocked, partly offsetting the decline in traffic. So, and finally, overall, the blocked border crossings appear to have had little impact on the aggregate values of Canadian imports and exports in February.
Yeah.
I mean, this shows that the fact that the borders were blocked didn't have a lot of impact, and it says it itself.
But here's the thing, though. They weren't really blocked. They were temporarily blocked in one part. They usually kept a lane open, and beyond that there were other boarding crossings that they always went through. No one actually stopped people from being able to go between the border crossings. This came out how many weeks ago from multiple people. I mean, even the mayor of Coutts, Andrew Dilkins, he admitted openly that you could get through. You know, they had negotiations going.
And if you actually look at the transcript, I think what you'll see is there was a lot of, we felt like it would affect the borders.
That's right.
And we had 2 hours of that, and you could set that straight in 2 seconds.
2 seconds,
that document.
Yeah.
So, and then one other thing I have to say that's getting to a bit of my boiling point is we heard so much about resources, lack of resources. I'd like to see what the budgets are for Transport Canada, CBSA, RCMP. If they have billion-dollar budgets and they can't figure out how to deal with a 3-week protest of Canadians. And let me tell you what is free: talking to the protesters, talking to Canadians. I think we've just gone so far. We're so overregulated. We've got way too many agencies. Nobody knows what anybody is doing. Everyone's pointing the finger at the other guy. And here we are. And what are they complaining about? Resources. So they just want more and have no answers. That's where I'm at today.
100%. And like, it was also openly admitted that there was a lot of, this was, what's his first name? Keenan. I live
Michael
tweet.
Keenan.
Michael Keenan. I live tweet only using the last name. So Michael Keenan and first name of the other guy, Christian Dea. They both admitted that all 3 levels of the government 100% did not collaborate with each other and were in utter chaos, essentially. So why didn't they go and talk to protesters? This was even before the convoy arrived in Ottawa, even before the Coutts blockade took place, even before the one in Windsor took place. 100% what was being strewn across the internet was that we're coming. This is what's happening. This is why they want to talk to a federal government employee, anyone from the federal government, anyone, because as I recall, that was because it was a really safe bet based on how our country is regulated, that the provincial government would follow through regardless of what the federal government mandated or didn't. But there was never a stream of dialogue that was open. Literally, I honestly can't even fathom that nobody was like, oh, we really want this to stop. Oh, we've got all these toolboxes and all these things in our arsenals that, we're going to use, we can use them. No one talked to anybody. It's like if it's like they couldn't even see what was going on. Like they were just blindly running around pretending like they had no options to exhaust except to literally hit the panic button, which is the Emergencies Act. I'm getting very frustrated as well, sitting there and being like, I want to bring the news to people. I want to be able to tell that side of the story. I can't wait for next week.
And to your point, I think a little bit more to Eva's point as well, that's the same government that has trouble running passport offices. When we talk about federal incompetence and government incompetence, that's the same government that has trouble properly running simple passport office. That's our Canada right now. But when we're talking exhausting resources, and I think that's a great segue into, I promised yesterday we would talk about Brenda Lucky. I think
yeah,
that's a great
right.
segue to Brenda Lucky's testimony. We did not exhaust all of our resources. Brenda Lucky yesterday stated that, let me just find the exact quote. She stated that it is her view that we have not yet exhausted all the resources available, and that the Ontario emergency measures would provide more resources. Brenda Lucky said that, what does it say to you as a lawyer who's trying to show how it was not right, it was not justified to invoke the Emergencies Act, that a commissioner of the RCMP goes out, one that loves Justin Trudeau, goes out and says it is her view we had not used all of our resources?
Yeah, well, who cares what I think as a lawyer? As a Canadian, I think that's just wrong. She did say that, and then nonchalantly during her evidence, she just says, yeah, I guess we could have talked to the protesters.
Like,
yes.
Yes, fists.
Exactly.
Like,
well, when you're saying that over and over, we have all these toolboxes, and even she was saying de-escalation is very important. So why didn't you enact any of these tools that you have at your disposal? Are Canadians really that scary to talk to? They were in the room with you yesterday. Just talk to Canadians.
Yeah. No one is.
Yeah.
No one's saying anything, and they're still really not talking. I mean, they're under oath, but I mean, Brenda Lucky, if you didn't see most of her testimony or any of the clips that we've cut, she really, for the most part, forgot to recall very general information that is her job to be able to know and to understand. This is the commissioner for the RCMP in Canada. How is this going on?
Yeah.
Well, she didn't talk to people. And then it turns out as well that nobody asked for her opinion on February 13th, which is incredibly telling and actually frightening.
Yes.
Because we know 100% CSIS said that there is no threat to justify the Emergencies Act. And then on February 13th, when there was a call and Brenda Lucky was involved, nobody asked the top police officer for Canada for their opinion.
Very telling.
And she didn't volunteer to say her opinion either. And she's an RCMP commissioner. She said, I wasn't asked, and I decided not to say anything. That's very telling of the type of person she is. Just to move on to a little bit more from Brenda Lucky, because we only have you on for 13 minutes, and then it's going to be you and I is going to talk about today's testimony. Let's show clip number 1. Brenda Lucky answering one of my questions. I had a chance to ask her 2 questions afterwards, and then I'll ask you some more of your thoughts from a legal perspective of Brenda Lucky's testimony. So let's just take a look at clip number 1. You said that the Emergencies Act was the safest option, that you couldn't have done what you did without it. But you didn't say that it was necessary, though. Is there a reason why you didn't say it was necessary?
It's not up to me to decide if it's necessary or if it meets the threshold. It's about, will it be useful to law enforcement? Is there any gaps or any problems if we were trying to enforce it? I thought it was useful. I thought it was needed. Now, obviously, I have the benefit of hindsight. We wouldn't have been able to do the enforcement actions as safe as we did. We wouldn't have been able to keep the people at that protest as safe as they were, and it wouldn't have been concluded in the short time frame it was if it wasn't for the emergency.
But just the audacity, really, in hindsight, like, you're not capable of making decisions that aren't even, there was a buildup to the EA. So we're being led to believe, at least, it wasn't just something that was like, we need to decide in 3 seconds if we're going to invoke this Emergencies Act. This was talked about before, prior to. Actually, I know for a fact they talked about it on the 10th of February between the deputy ministers meeting. So in hindsight, like, you had days to think about this. I'm sure Justin Trudeau had from the moment he heard about the convoy to the 14th to think about it, and he still went forward with it. So why do we have people in a position of leadership that aren't capable of making calls when it is their job to be able to protect Canadians to the best of their ability? And she showed her incompetence. But why do you think that this is happening in this country?
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but just watching what she responded to, it was like a circle of information. It was not clear at all. She started with the right answer, saying that it's not for her to suggest or justify whether or not the Emergencies Act is necessary. And that's correct. CSIS is the only one that should do that. But then when she goes on and saying, well, it was helpful and it was needed, well, why didn't you talk to the federal government about that on February 13th? Because we know you didn't. Yeah. And how does that affect anything when you're not the one to make the call? So what is she saying? Hindsight is 2020. When I rewatched that clip just now, it actually became more confusing. It's like she's trying to confuse the public. She's trying to confuse Canadians. And that is so improper on so many levels. Again, I'm taking it back to the OPP officers and the commissioner of the OPP. You should get straight, clear, and competent answers from policing authorities. I have no idea what she said after watching that the second time.
Of course, well, that's all that's all their tactics. You say a bunch of words and you don't mean anything. We see liberal politicians do that all the time in all of their press conference. That's Justin Trudeau's favorite tactic. But looking back at Brenda Lucki's testimony, I'm curious about that though. You said that it was only CSIS' responsibility to decide whether or not the Emergencies Act was necessary. It was only their responsibility to look at whether or not the threshold under Section 2 was actually met. So just out of curiosity, what is everyone else doing here at the commission if it's not CSIS?
Yeah, you know, and I think that's what we're getting at with some of Brendan's questions, because that was the last question he had to the CBSA agent. Okay, and that's why I said next. That is a very good question. And he did put that to somebody, I think yesterday. He was like, so was there any agency or any enforcement agency that suggested that you needed the Emergencies Act? I really am having a hard time. And this is why I'm feeling a little bit bad for Canadians that, again, looking at the budgets of these departments and agencies, and I don't know why they're here. I don't think they know why they're here.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I think this has just become a big, what's that, the board game where like you're trying to figure out the mystery and you don't know like who did it. What is that? Clue?
Clue. Yeah.
I wish that the Canadian government would get a clue, by the way. But seriously, like in regards to her testimony, it's very confusing. Yeah. Right? It's very confusing. And then what she says off record is even more confusing. I feel like my life has become kind of like a psyop in a way. Like all this information from these people that I grow up and I learn that I'm supposed to trust because they're going to make the decisions to protect me. I don't feel very protected as a Canadian.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't want to leave it on a super negative note here. I do want to leave it on a positive note. And what I do hope that this actually brings to light for Canadians, that we just have to be way more involved in our government, in politics, so that we don't get blindsided like this again. Because now I think this inquiry is great, so that we could really see where the competency is, where the incompetency is as well. And we know we have to really take part in these democratic processes and be involved.
Yeah, just continue on Brenda Lucky. Let's show clip number 2, which is another part of my testimony. Not my testimony, sorry, my interview with her during the media scrum. Another question that I asked her. Let's take a look at that. You said during your testimony that you didn't know if you needed a court order to seize the bank accounts as freeze asset.
The act wasn't seizing, right?
No.
The act was freezing. I don't know if that changes anything.
I think that's a legal question.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not sure.
Is there a reason why you weren't aware that you needed a court order to do that?
No, the seizing, I knew that you needed a court order. I wasn't sure on the freezing because we've never done the freezing of accounts. We obviously, when we seize accounts, that's a different aspect, but the freezing was pretty new to me and I haven't looked at it any further.
And that goes a little bit to what you were saying earlier about her not knowing that you were supposed to have a court order to seize bank accounts, freeze assets.
Well, you're the top law enforcement person in Canada. So it's really embarrassing that you don't know what the law is.
I think that's the whole thing, embarrassing. I think that's the word to describe Brenda Lucky. And there's also another thing that came out during her testimony. She's not the one that said it, but it still came out during her testimony. There's a picture that I sent about notes that were taken. If we could put that up on the screen, notes that were taken about what Bill Blair said during perhaps a meeting, perhaps a call. It's the note where you see some yellow highlighting, some blue highlighting. All right, right. Let's zoom in on the yellow highlighting, because that's the important part. And you might have some issue reading what is written, but I was able to depict it. So if we can zoom in a little bit. All right, so it's Minister Blair. So that's what Minister Blair said. It says, despite throwing Ottawa under the bus, praising OPP for the work at Windsor, which probably means the Windsor blockades, the Windsor protests that were there. And when he refers to Ottawa police, when he refers to Ottawa, he means the Ottawa police. And that was made clear during the testimony yesterday. So, I mean, what are we supposed to understand from that, from what Minister Bill Blair said about throwing Ottawa under the bus, throwing the OPP under the bus, effectively throwing Peter Slowly under the bus, and praising the OPP?
Well, yeah, you just see that these people aren't working together. So here they are, and you said this, Celine, earlier, nobody's working together on any levels, yet they're all crying for more resources. Maybe the OPP didn't. That might have been one of the agencies that hasn't. But everyone else is saying that. But it's really a clear lack of confidence in one another, working together. And again, it's just shameful for Canada to have to witness this on a national scale.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally agree with you. I'm not sure what else, honestly, I have to add to it. Like, I really do entirely agree with what you just said. I stand with you there. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there another thing that we haven't touched on regarding Brenda Lucky's testimony that you think would be relevant for our viewers at home to know about what she had to say? Or do you think we did everything?
I think we did a pretty good analysis.
Yeah,
this
so
time.
basically showed the incompetency, showed an embarrassment that Brenda Lucky is.
She did it all herself. Let's be honest. She really did.
Brenda Lucky goes to bed early. We also learned
her
that.
Her bedtime's 10 p.m. Yeah, keep that in mind. Yeah.
She went to bed early during what was supposed to be a national threat, a threat to national security.
Movement.
Yeah,
what?
Exactly.
What is going on?
And no one's working together. All right, from today's testimony, Brendan's cross-examination, we saw at some point. So he was supposed to cross-examine the witness first, the two witnesses first. But then as he was coming on the stand, the government of Canada objected to him cross-examining the witness. I don't think that we have the clip, but I know that's what happened the first time, which is why then he cross-examined afterwards. Why did that happen?
Okay, so the rules that the commission has set up is that 2 days before you're cross-examining a witness, you're asked to put the documents. You have to email the documents that you're going to put to the witness, possibly. So 2 days before any witness, we're doing that by 5 o'clock. And the commission has given a bit of leeway on that. But what is incredibly frustrating here is that the government of Canada has been dumping, they've been doing a data dump on all parties. And there's been thousands of documents in the last few days, excuse me, being uploaded. I have to talk.
Okay, let's switch.
We can get you some water. So basically there were a lot of documents that the government of Canada sent to all the parties extremely late in the commission. From I think what was seen, it was close to 3,000 documents that were sent pretty late.
Which is crazy.
So that's a lot of documents. Yeah. And then Brendan Miller, from what was said by the government of Canada today, while the initial examination was taking place, he sent 3 documents to the other councils, and then the government of Canada complained basically that they did not have time to review the documents with the witnesses. And that they needed time during the break to review the document. So Brendan Miller had to refrain himself from cross-examining Michael Keenan and Christopher Dea at first, and had to do it. I think he was the third one to do it.
I mean, that's incredible. To be entirely honest, I had to step away momentarily. So I'm very sad to have missed Miller time today, the second time around at least, because I mean, for the most part, we've seen really Rillo has been very impartial. But what I've noticed lately, and let me know if you agree with me on this or not, but it seems like recently there's been a lot of like cutting back time or not being as lenient, I've noticed, with providing convoy corp lawyer Brendan Miller with a little bit of additional time, where he's been very lenient in a lot of other situations with the other lawyers and granting them 5, sometimes 10 minutes or more, I've noticed. So what do you think about that?
Well, you know what I found surprising is that the government of Canada has no issue, once again, sending 3,000 documents to the other council.
Like, that's crazy.
On Remembrance Day. Yeah. But they have a lot of trouble receiving 3 documents that, from my understanding, were already made to the public. They were they were open sources documents.
Mhm.
They had trouble with this 3 document, but were totally fine
Yeah.
with sending 3,000 of them. And they claimed that this was breaching the rules, that this was breaking the rules, what Brendan Miller said. So I thought it was a little bit hypocritical, and I thought it was a little bit funny. All right, let's go to a quick ad break. When we come back, we'll go further into today's testimony, and we'll continue to discuss, well, this joke that is the Emergencies Act inquiry. Let's take a quick break. All right, we are back. Our apologies for the little technical difficulties. So where were we at? What were you saying?
Well, I was just talking about how DOJ is dumping documents on us, and then I couldn't talk anymore because they're keeping us up late at night all day, all the time. And then, like we were saying, is even one of the documents that Brendan wanted to cross-examine on today was delivered to us today. And then they're saying you're breaching the rules by doing this late. And it's like, it's a lose-lose situation for us here.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a tactic that organizations, unfortunately, like the DOJ does.
Wait, so one of the documents that they were complaining about having received too late from you guys, they sent it today. And then they complained about you not sending it in advance.
Well, maybe that wasn't the one specific they were talking about, because that would be a little bit silly.
I see.
But there were a couple other ones at the same time that just were put together. So I don't think that they were arguing specifically about that one, but the other ones that, and they were just a bit more resource based. It wasn't, it wasn't a secret hidden document. It was a public document to help contextualize the questions. So the fact that they take offense on this, it's just a bit silly. Again, I'm just going to use that word so it's a bit more professional.
I think it's a nicer word than others would use. Just before we let you go, I feel like from Michael Keane's testimony, apart from a cross-examination by Brendan Miller, it's my opinion that we didn't hear a lot of things in relation to the invocation of the Emergencies Act in terms of why it was necessary to invoke it or why it was unnecessary to invoke it. I don't know what you think of that, but can you give us a quick rundown of your general impression of Michael Keane's and Christopher J.'s testimony?
Yeah, well, like I was saying, there was just a lot of fear talked about, and fiction and not fact is where I'm going with it. So there was a lot of discussions about how investors may have worried about it. And in the end, like, I think they were there because of the economic impacts. But again, under cross-examination, it was clear that, and, using a little bit of common sense, you would think that a protest of a few days with a few trucks are not going to cause massive disruption. How about closing down the country for 2 years? How about an ArriveCAN app that the US doesn't use? How about look at what's actually causing the problem rather than throwing and pointing fingers at a few people that are just frustrated with the government?
100%. Yeah. 100%. It really, I mean, ArriveCAN is huge, and to only be talking about it at this point in regards to the borders, and it's really, it's a miracle, like I said, that this is going on still. Like it really is. It's a big blame game, and I'm tired of hearing these bullies. Like, honestly though, like it seems like, in a way, it's my opinion, like some of the people that have testified were, let's say it was purposeful to invoke the Emergencies Act without any necessary evidence that would actually provide a reasonable reason to use that invocation of the Emergencies Act. But let's say it was purposeful, right? So it looks like, to me, in my opinion, that we have some people that were probably in on it, and some people that were bullied and maybe did or didn't consent to being a part of it. And some people that, like today, I was like, why are you telling me about your job description? I don't care what your job is. I cared what part you played in the invocation of the Emergencies Act at the public inquiry that we are here to understand of whether or not this was necessary for literally hours. I mean, there's just a few times I just sit back in my chair and I was like, whoa. Yeah, this is crazy. This is really crazy.
Yeah, I think it happened to all of us. And as we said, if none of them had any clues about threshold of Section 2 of the CSIS Act.
Wasn't that provided in their initial statement? And the commission's like, yeah, let's hear you for hours actually though, and give cross-examination lawyers 3 seconds to counter your 5 hours of speaking.
And not only that, if it's only CSIS, again, talk to it. Why isn't it only CSIS that's testifying? I think it's pretty funny to think about it that way. But anyways, that's where we're at. And I think there's a few things that you said that is going to be great for us to talk about later. Thanks so much for coming on, Eva. I hope that you're feeling better right now. And I look forward to having you on again.
Yeah.
DOJ, stop throwing documents at us.
All right.
Shout out. Hear that? Shout
out. Let's throw to clip number 3. A clip of what was said today in relation to Marco Mendicino and the Coutts border blockade. Let's take a look at that.
So in the email that we showed you earlier, which we don't need to pull up again, but is the email where you advised Minister Mendicino in regards to the Coutts port of entry. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you also advised him that at 11:05 p.m. local time on February 14th, the RCMP had successfully cleared and opened the north and southbound roads at the Pacific Highway for the resumption of traffic. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so the traffic flow resumed, and there were very few protesters remaining on site, which is what you advised him of.
Yes.
Right, you reopened on February 14th, but because the protesters had cleared on February 13th.
That's correct.
Right.
Honestly, his testimony, we didn't hear a lot. We didn't hear a lot of things in relation to the Emergencies Act directly that would justify or prove that the Emergencies Act was necessary to be used from neither of their testimony.
No, and I remember saying that a lot too today. I was like, there's so many